Welcome to Bigfoot Society. I've got an episode from the archives for you today. We talked to Megan Moonchild from northern Alberta about her many Bigfoot encounters on her grandfather's farm. If you've had Bigfoot encounters in the same area or know of any, please reach out to me. And if you'd like to be on the show, please contact me directly at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Do you wish there were more episodes of Bigfoot Society to listen to? Well, guess what? There is in the Patreon. If you become a supporting member over at patreon.com/Bigfoot Society, you get a members only episode every week, and there's much more in there. Check it out, and let's get on with the show. All right, Bigfoot Society, I've got the privilege of talking to a new friend tonight, Miss Megan Moonchild from Alberta, Canada. I ran across Megan's Bigfoot story that she shared in a Facebook group online and approached her and asked if she would ever be up to sharing her story on a podcast. And thankfully, she did say yes. So, Megan, how's it going tonight?
It's going good. Thank you for having me on your show. It's an honor. Honestly, thank you.
That's great. That's great. And how are things up in Alberta right now?
Currently it's nice at the moment where I'm at anyway, but it depends on which part of Alberta you live. So right now it's kind of springy and I'm happy for it. Honestly, I just want the snow gone already.
Do you live in a pretty heavily wooded, forested part of Alberta then?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. The town I live in is called Rocky Mountain House. And we're like, literally, we have a view of the Rocky Mountains from Main Street. It's amazing. And like surrounding us is like a glacial river and just heavy, heavy woods. Like you could easily get lost out there in this wilderness. No problem, honestly. But it's so beautiful.
Have you always lived in the area in Alberta up there?
I actually lived further north, originally in Slave Lake. Also grew up in High Prairie, but like not in the town, more like on a quarter section, just nice little, heavily wooded, but beautiful farm and lots of grazing fields and thick woods. So it was heaven. But there was definitely some odd things that happened on that land here and there when I was growing up. So.
Oh, really? What kind of weird things did you experience?
Feelings of being watched at times. I'd get like a really creeped out kind of feeling, like I wouldn't see anything, but I'd just have this feeling like something's watching me. And like my grandfather would be either working in the field or with the cattle or in the garden or something. Like everybody had their jobs, so we all kept busy. But just when I'd be like helping to feed the cows or working in the garden, I'd get a weird vibe and sometimes like just a weird feeling up my spine. And sometimes there were lights in the woods, like in the distance every now and then. They were usually like white or like light colored. Weird sounds, like sometimes like sounds that sounded like, I don't know, like you'd think like you were in the jungle or something out like where there's like monkeys or chimps or something. Like, I don't know. It was just,
Really?
Sometimes you'd see eyes shine every now and then, but like, I only just thought it was like, the cows or horses or something, but I don't know. Like there's just weird things that happen. Thankfully, my grandfather, he was smart, like the way that he had the farm all set up. Like there were absolutely no woods near any of the windows. Like he had all the woods back away from the trailer. So it's like nothing could just come up and, just look, yeah, he was smart and he had all these lights everywhere that lit up the place so you could see it really well at night. And he always just said it was good so we wouldn't trip or something because it would get pretty dark out there. So
do you think your grandfather had experiences that led him to that point where everything was, the heavy lights, the not being near the wood line, things of that nature?
Yeah. Like he didn't even tell me about any of his experiences until I approached him on the day that I ended up seeing I guess a Sasquatch or whatever you want to call it. Sorry, I'm a little shaky.
That's all right.
Sure.
You did share something with me before our interview that was very interesting. And do you feel comfortable sharing a little bit about your heritage? I think that really helps provide some context maybe to the stories you're about to share.
Oh, of course. I'm part Cree, Indigenous, on my father's side. I didn't know a whole lot about my culture until much later in my life. I only just recently last year got to finally meet my blood grandmother on my father's side, but currently we're all working towards getting our actual official treaty, like a certificate or whatever you call it. So I'm excited for that. But right now I'm just kind of been on this spiritual journey. It seems like my whole life, but for some odd reason, like I saw strange things growing up and sometimes had odd experiences I couldn't quite explain. Such as seeing that particular being on the back of my grandfather's property. My grandmother on my father's side, she's considered an elder and she's actually quite respected, and I adore her. She's such a sweet lady. And I've asked her questions concerning my experience. Like I told her my story and what happened. And she said that she thinks that it's like a guardian. They're like, can be spirit guardians, I guess, or guardians of the forest. But also like there are good spirits and bad spirits. So I learned that, sometimes these things, they don't even mean to appear to us. Sometimes people just have like a sight, like they just one day are just minding their business and they just see it. And it's like all shock, like you see me, even though like maybe it thought it was in like its own little dimension, or it was like somehow hiding from us, like doing that predator thing it does where it tries to, like blend in with everything and conceal itself. It's so weird. The cloaking. But my experience, it happened at like 10:30 in the morning. It was pretty early. Well, not really, I guess. But basically my grandmother, she asked me if I would be willing to go and just pick some wild berries and just fill this, just ice cream pail, and I was like, because she was going to make homemade pie, and I absolutely loved her berry crumble. It was so good. And I was totally down for that. And I had my dog with me. He was a border collie. He was the sweetest dog. His name was King. He was the best dog I ever had. I loved that dog. He was a good protector, and he was with me the whole time. So I didn't feel concerned because I was only walking like 15 minutes down the cut. Cause like my grandfather, there were these cut lines that went down, and he'd keep them nice and cut short because he'd let the cattle in there. So we'd have some extra pasture so they could have new grazing ground. And the cows weren't there at the time. So I'm like, heck yeah, I'm going to go get these berries. I was only 12 years old. It was 1999. And it was like the end of August, like end of summer, like when everything is in bloom and everything, like love that time of year. But anyway, so I'm walking, King's with me, and I'm about to take a turn to the right. And as I take the turn, I see King. He just basically freezes in front of me. And of course, I'm usually more like looking at the ground. I was, looking at the flowers, and then I see my dog. All of a sudden, he freezes, basically in front of me. And I'm like, "What's up, boy? Like, what's got you scared or whatever?" And then like I look ahead. It's about 20, 25 feet, not too far. And I see this black figure, like, it was hairy. I thought it was a black bear, honestly. Like, just my mind could not compute what I was looking at, because at this time I had no idea what a Sasquatch was. Like, I didn't even watch Harry and the Hendersons till I was probably 14. So that's probably one of the first times I even learned about what a Sasquatch was. But when it stood up on two legs, it was massive. I have never, ever seen a person that big before. I've gone to like WWE wrestling, and I saw the Big Show. I've seen the Undertaker. They're big guys, but they looked small compared to this guy. And so my dog, he backed up, like right up against my leg, just tight against me. And he was just kind of low to the ground, almost frozen in place, but like he didn't run away, thankfully. I don't know what would have happened. I just felt like, thank you to my dog, for not leaving me behind. It's standing there looking at me, and its hair reminds me of human hair, like looked like human hair. It was long, looked kind of silky, actually nice. Mostly, he didn't look like really. How would I describe? Sorry. He looked so human. It's just really jarring thinking back to it. So the first look that he had on his face that I noticed, like emotional, was kind of like mine. It felt like we were both like, whoa, like he almost had this look like, you see me, like a very surprised for a moment look. And then all of a sudden his face just went completely like neutral, like from surprise, big eyed to like just straight face. He didn't look aggressive. He didn't show his teeth or growl or anything, he was just very quiet. He didn't have any leaves or anything in his hair. His hair was nice. It was matted in a couple of spots, but like for the most part, like he didn't look like really old. He kind of, to me, seemed more like maybe middle-aged or maybe a little younger in his prime. Just from the sense that I got, honestly, his eyes were so piercing because like they were like a gold amber kind of color, and they were so big. Like they were huge. Like this thing must have been at least 8 to 9 feet tall. Like, though, I was 12, right? And it's literally a giant. So anything would probably look giant, but to me, he looked pretty big. But like, I feel like in my mind, after all these years trying to attempt to calculate, kind of later on down the line when I was like 16, I tried to use a measuring tape and try and figure out like the relative height just from that tree that he was standing near. He was there picking berries when I walked up on him, and he looks really happy and content until I came along. So
that is a fascinating description of what you saw. Do you remember anything particular about how the head, maybe the shape of the head looked or anything like that?
Yeah. Kind of like sort of cone shape, but not completely. More normal looking head, but just overall just bigger, just a bigger head, like a massive head. Like just, it's insane. Like I can't believe how massive he was. Like his hands, his feet, his friggin' everything, and his I don't even want to talk about the other thing that was just dangling there. Like, dude, but like, what can you do? I mean, it's not like you expect them to have clothes on or anything. But he was very calm. Honestly, when he and we were like in having eye contact. I was scared, but I was also kind of curious because I'd literally never seen anything like that in my life. And I'd always believed as a kid, that maybe fairies did exist. Maybe these other mythological creatures once existed and we just don't know for sure. And, some things are never certain until proved otherwise. So, and I always just kind of, I suppose, was a whimsical child in that way. And so seeing this big, hairy, wild man, this giant, literal giant, standing there so close. My grandfather taught me as a child, like from a very young age, because I used to love hunting and fishing and being outdoors with him. And he was like, if you ever come across a bear or a cougar, just stay very calm. Do not turn your back to them. Back away slowly. Do not run, whatever you do. Right. So that was kind of what was going through my head is this looks like a human. And yet he looks like sort of animal like, just because the hair all over his body and his smell too. Whew. I mean, at first I smelled it a little bit as I was approaching, but I just thought that was cows. Like genuinely, I didn't, it was just musky and smelled like wet dog a bit and just earthy smells, I guess. Yeah. Like just a wild animal smell is how I would describe it, but it wasn't overbearing. Like even when I was standing there, like I could smell him a smidgen bit, but not very much. It's weird because like where I saw him, so like at this back part of the property of the farm, there's a river, there's like a 15-20 foot drop off. And then there's the river and that's like literally the end cut of the property. Right. And, there's like a birch forest, just all these beautiful white birch trees everywhere at this one part. It's incredible. And I used to love playing there because I called it the, forest of ghosts and whatever as a kid. And like, I'd find weird things. Like I'd find trees very high up, just snapped off, like trees that are not little trees. Some of them were even still young trees, like not even like dead. And they didn't look like they should have been dead, it was weird. And I found sometimes like, formations with rocks, I guess. Like I even found some bones at one point, like a carcass of a deer, some other bones, like it looked kind of like a little animal graveyard a bit. But my grandpa also said that he sometimes would take like parts of animals that he had butchered or whatever, and he'd just throw the scraps out there, out there in the forest.
Why would he
give back to nature?
Okay.
Yeah, in his mind, at first I didn't understand it either, but then he told me later on that he did it because it seemed to keep them away from us. Like he felt like if I just give them some portions from the garden, food that's like overly ripe or whatever, and just, whatever's left of whatever I butchered, I'll just put it, like throw it away, really far away from us out there in the woods. There was a spot. And he said that he felt like it was like an understanding, like they wouldn't come into our space, and they never did. Like I never saw them ever enter the yard or nothing. Like I never saw the eye shine come any closer than from the woods. So thank goodness. Never felt like I was being watched in my own home. That was nice. That's a
plus. I want to get back to your grandfather a little later, but I also want to make sure that we give your encounter the full time as well. And I just have some questions for you. So, you're looking at the face, you're looking it in the face, and it's always interesting how some people will describe what they see. And I'm just curious, what did you notice about the features of the face when you're actually looking at it?
He looked, he reminded me of like, I've seen some pictures that were old black and white photos of some Native American chieftains from back in the day. And he just reminded me of like very Native American looking in the face, I guess. His nose was quite wide. His lips were, quite wide. Like his just whole face was just so big. So his hair was like swept back out of his face. It didn't look messy or anything. He had kind of a beard sort of going on. Didn't look really all too messy. But of course it had been raining that morning, so you never know. Maybe he got a shower. But his eyes were very human to me. They stood out quite a bit. His hair was very black, but it had a bit of a reddish tinge to it. And like I've heard people say that they can look really, really dark, like a shadow dark, but he didn't look that dark to me. He looked just like a really like a nice, just a black hair. Basically, that's it, with some red hue to it in the light. I mean, we were literally standing there in the light, and I could see his features quite well because it was sunny and there was no cloud in the sky, which to me makes it even more insane, just because like these beings seem to be so cautious. So the fact that he was very comfortable, just, there crouched, eating away happily, like no big deal. It was just kind of funny to me when I look back and think about it.
Would you say that the actions it was doing as it was picking the berries, would you say they were more human-like or more maybe ape-like, or maybe a mixture of the two?
Honestly, it reminded me more of like, I suppose, how a human might just be there crouched, just eating. But I mean, it could have been maybe a little bit of a mix of the two, but I felt like he was just sitting there like a normal, like any person would, just chowing down and enjoying himself. Basically, that was just kind of the feeling I got. I just got the sense like I was interrupting him. Maybe like I just came along, and like these beings, though, they seem so in touch with their environment. So I'm like surprised that I was able to even like come across him at all, to be honest, especially when he had that really surprised look on his face, when he turned and looked at me. But I remember also being very quiet, just standing there, us looking at each other. I felt this weird feeling come over me at one point. Out of curiosity, I lifted my hand very slowly and just gave a little wave with my fingers, and just kind of like just to see what he would do. I was kind of curious, I don't know, childish, whatever. I was scared, but I was also like are you a person? Like, I'm literally thinking to myself, like, are you a person or are you like a wild animal? Like, so anyway, he gave like a grunt basically at me. He just gave a grunt, just one grunt. It was a deep kind of grunt. And I felt like this weird sensation in my body. It was very odd, like a numbing, tingling. I even had like this weird ringing in my ear at one point, which was odd. And yeah, he just turned. It was like when he turned, his whole upper body turned. You know, he had a very thick neck. I will say this right now, like physically, he was built. Like, I mean, he looked like he could take down a buffalo or something. He was so built. Like, his traps were massive. His shoulders, he didn't have much of a neck, but he had a neck, but it was like super thick. And it's just his traps. They were just so freaking massive. Like, it's ridiculous. Almost reminds me of a bull or something. Like, and he looked healthy. He didn't look sickly or anything like that. His skin was kind of a gray color. I would describe it as like a gray color.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So the actual skin tone was kind of gray, you're saying?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
He was like gray with like nice black hair. It was kind of like wavy. Like, you know, if a woman or a person has like long, wavy, silky hair, it kind of looked like that. Like on his arms and his legs, it would be about, 4 to 6 inches long hair, sometimes 2 inches long, like on his face, his chest, it had not as much hair, which is surprising, but it was kind of like a little bit thinner on his chest and his stomach. He had hair down there, but it didn't hide much, I'm afraid. Also, he had the thickest thighs and arms, like, holy crap. Bodybuilder, like, even, I don't even know, maybe more than a bodybuilder, because like that was just crazy how like Eddie Hall, one of the strongest men in the world, and he made him look like small, and that's crazy. He's like a heavyweight champion or bodybuilder or whatever. So
did you notice any specific details about the hands or the feet?
Yes. So he looked like he had human hands and feet, but he definitely had like hair on his hands and feet, but not much. Or like he had some hair on top of his hands, some on top of his feet. But like for the most part, I could see there was just like a lot of dark skin and like dark gray skin. His hands and feet looked a little bit rougher. Like, understandably, they're probably using their hands and feet, for everything, obviously, hunting and everything else. So I'm sure. But like, that's probably the one part on his body that looked the more worn or rough. Like his nails were kind of like, they weren't sharp. They looked like normal human nails, and they were kind of maybe a little cracked, some of them. But yeah, like his hands and feet look pretty human to me, honestly. I didn't notice really anything differently other than his fingernails and toes seemed to be like more dark, like almost black or something. It's kind of weird. But
that is very weird, actually. Same number of fingers and toes as a human would have.
Yeah, 5 fingers, 5 toes. Yeah, just massive.
Right. Yeah, a lot bigger than we're going to have, obviously. So you're saying the individual, he turned and then started to walk away then?
Yeah, when he turned, his whole upper body turned. It's not like with a person, you could just turn your neck and then turn your body. It was like a whole turns. And then he just walks into the white birch forest. And it's literally like 10 steps. I can hear the movement of the trees, some cracks of wood, and then absolute silence, like absolute nothing. And that is the thing I noticed too, is when he and I were apart from each other, everything was so quiet. I couldn't hear nothing. I could hear my dog whimper occasionally, and I certainly felt like whimpering, but I tried my best not to do so. I just didn't get a sense like he was going to hurt me. I felt like if he really wanted to, he could literally have reached me and no problem and snatched my little 12-year-old butt up and taken me. I do not think my dog could have done anything to stop him, though that I think that's just me. I mean, my dog, he literally fended the farm against bear, cougar, coyotes, all kinds of creatures over the years. But this was very different. And I could tell because my dog was shaking. He seemed a little shaking, like literally. And I'm shaking just talking about it because I feel like I could feel like my dog's fear. And I also was like, just stay calm, just stay calm. Everything's going to be okay. I didn't get a sense of danger. But I know like after that experience that made me think I could have been the end of me. Like I could have become a missing 411 or something, and that would be the end of me. And I'm so glad that didn't happen.
When you're watching the Sasquatch walk away from you towards the birch forest, did you notice anything in particular about, how there's the way a person will walk, its gait? Did you notice anything about the gait of the Sasquatch as it walked away from you?
Actually, yeah. Okay. So like, it seems almost like their ankle it seemed like it wasn't quite in the normal place that like a human ankle would be. Pardon me. It seemed almost like lower or something. And maybe it was really odd. Like the way he talked, like the way he walked, was very smooth. Like I could barely even hear him moving. Like it's crazy how quiet it was. Because after he was gone, like everything in the forest returned to normal and, all the noises came back. But it was like for that moment when he and I were there together interacting for that moment, it felt like it's almost like time stopped and like everything like around me. I was really, to be honest, I feel almost comforted, kind of weirdly enough. Like I feel scared, but at the same time, I don't feel, maybe I should be more scared. But I've also been kind of curious about a lot of things like supernatural or cryptid related for a lot of years since I was a kid. But the fact that it even happened to me, I was just a normal person until that. And then of course, like a couple weeks later, I end up seeing him again. And
really,
yeah, I saw the big guy again. He was not alone either. He was actually with like a female and a little one. And this is crazy. Like, I mean, the first time I saw him, after everything returned to normal, I'm like, I got to run back home. I got to tell my grandpa what I saw. Like, and yeah, I can definitely tell you what he told me if you'd like.
Yeah. Anything that you would feel comfortable sharing, anything you feel comfortable sharing would be great. Yep.
Okay. Well, so my grandfather was always a very practical man, a very hardworking, down to earth person. He was my hero and I miss him terribly. And he was always such someone you could always turn to that would think calm, when things were kind of crazy. And when I got home, he was like, where have you been? We were starting to get worried. It's been like, almost an hour. And I'm like, well, I got to tell you something. And I wanted to talk to him alone. So took a little walk and I explained that I had, Grandpa, I saw a big hairy man. He was black colored. Like his hair, I was like, he looked like some kind of wild man or something. Like he was just this really giant hairy man on the back end of your property down where, all the Saskatoon berries are and the strawberries and everything. Cause we had loads of raspberries, strawberries, blueberries, Saskatoons, like you name it, wild rhubarb. I mean, where we lived, we had a lot of really yummy natural foods that just grew on land. So we were very lucky. And I feel like maybe that was part of the reason why they probably liked my grandpa's property. And I think that's why they always kind of lingered on the edges. And I don't know. That's just kind of my thoughts. And plus he did sort of start giving them, leftovers and whatever now and then. And it's just my grandfather always felt like it's important to give back to nature, that it's important to, if you have extra anything, make sure you can give to the community and give it back to nature, give back to animals so that they can eat, because, sometimes animals struggle and they go through a lot during the winter. So like we were always kind of like that. I don't know. He was always a very good gentleman, but tough as nails. That's for sure. But it's just, I guess, before I was born, he said that, sometimes things in the garden would go missing, during the night. He'd find stuff gone, like we had squashes that would go missing, we'd have all kinds of greens that would go missing. I'm not 100% sure on everything per se, because he never really went into that detail, but he said that it got on his nerves and he was like, screw it, I'm just going to build a garden for these, whatever they are, all the way over, way away, and just hope that they'll get the hint and just go there and not take from our garden, because he felt like that's stealing and they're being pests. He did not feel comfortable with the notion of, because here in Canada, we don't exactly have a lot for guns. Like, I mean, we have like the occasional, we have rifles and stuff for hunting, and he just did not feel like it would be wise to pull guns out, especially a rifle like a 22 or anything else. He just did not feel like any of these guns would do a whole heck of a lot. He didn't have like big game hunting guns at the time. So in his opinion, he felt like if I do something, what if it angers these creatures and they start doing things that make it really hard to live there peacefully? So he just kind of decided, I hope that this is enough, that they'll just recognize, hey, this is for you guys, stay over there, basically. And they did. Like they never came in the yard. Nothing went missing again from the garden. Everything was fine. And sometimes when there was extra crap, he'd just go and give it to the cows and, the pigs and the goats and all that anyway. Like, so it didn't really matter. Like in his mind, he's like, these creatures are going to come and take the food from my animals, or I can just leave, some out there for them, and hopefully they won't steal from my animals, because like everything always happened at night while we're asleep. So my grandfather, his parents were Norwegian, like he's Norwegian descendant. He grew up in Canada, but he grew up with a lot of stories about, giants and like a lot of Norse kind of stories. And he believed that there were things that existed that maybe were beyond our ability to understand or fully comprehend, even spiritual things. And so like for him, he just kind of felt like, I don't want war with these things, whatever they are. He genuinely just wanted to live his life out there peacefully, because my grandma and great grandmother, they were the sweetest ladies, but they could be sometimes they could get a little bit like anxiety. And he just did not think that they would be able to handle knowing that information, and just did his absolute best to keep it just to himself. Like he carried this by himself for so long, and then I tell him my experience, and now all of a sudden he's like, well, you've seen the big guy, so I might as well tell you some things and kind of explain to you why I didn't want you going to certain parts of the property, like where certain parts of the forest are. And I didn't really know how I felt about you going out there to pick those berries, to be honest. Even though it's not far, I still had a feeling like, something was off, like, especially because I was gone a little bit longer than expected, because they literally told me, you're only can be gone for so long and then we expect you back type deal. So, because I was 12. So like I knew the property really well, but I was definitely the kind of kid that was rambunctious and liked to run off into the woods and play play pretend with my animals. I'm such a nerd like that. But yeah, I was very close with nature. Like I always loved nature. I always loved running around barefoot, except for in the cow field. Nope.
Right. Yeah. Good call.
On my feet. But yeah, like I loved it. Like I loved it because we had a giant family rock. There's actually, that's hilarious. Like not far from the garden, there was a giant rock, and it was painted with flowers on it. It was so cute and I loved it. And it was like a family project that my mom and grandma did together. And it's funny because there were sometimes things that were on that rock, things that would be wrapped up in like leaves with, I don't know, some sort of, I'm not exactly sure how to describe it. It's like sometimes there was a pretty rock. Sometimes there was some pretty flowers. Sometimes these flowers had medicinal properties, I guess, like wild lavender or sage or whatever. It was interesting. I don't know. Sometimes like there'd be little things like little trinkets on there, and my grandpa would just take them and I'd be like, I just wouldn't think about it really. He'd be like, oh, it's just a gift from the fairies. But in reality, now I think I know maybe where those things were coming from. It's very interesting. I never quite understood it myself, but
that is a fantastic detail as well.
Happen.
Yeah. Sounds like the entire interactions that your grandfather had were very peaceful though with the creatures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He never felt threatened by them, but he did say that didn't mean that they weren't capable of becoming threatening. So he was very cautious man. Honestly, that was one of the things I always respected about him is he was never a fool. He always thought things through very, very clearly before he did anything. And I love that about him because somehow he managed to make it work. And it was kept a secret for so long. And I kept it a secret. Like I couldn't talk to anybody but him. I talked to my mom eventually about it, but it took me years before I finally opened up to her about it. And then my second experience happened, and that was crazy because I was with my grandfather when it happened. So
before we get into that, a few more questions for context. This area, how close is your nearest neighbor in this area, would you say?
About a mile and a half away.
Okay.
Oh, I'm about 20, 30 minutes away from the town, High Prairie. That's about how far it was. We're out there pretty far.
Gotcha.
Pretty spread out.
It's
either a lot of farming land or a lot of forest.
So I am very interested to hear how you and your grandfather actually had a sighting together, which is very poetic in a way, really, that you both were able to experience the family together.
I agree. Yeah, I never really thought of it that way, but no, that's true, actually. Yeah, I mean, it's something we ended up sharing together a lot, actually. It definitely brought us closer. Okay, I'll be happy to tell you what happened. It was a couple of weeks after I saw the big guy the first time. So it's like 9:30 in the morning, and we're in my grandfather's old beat up Ford truck, just one of those old fashioned farm trucks you can take out there and have fun and whatever. And we're just driving down the cut, and we're going to the back cut of the property, and we're driving along the river. We went to go check on the cows because they were off in this back field, and we're just talking and enjoying the morning sun. It was a beautiful day. I mean, just perfect, honestly. I can still remember having the window rolled down. And so after we check on the cows, he wanted to check on the calves, make sure everything was going good, like the younger cows anyway. Excuse me. So he turns around, we're driving back, and we're going to go back home. So we're going very slow. We're just casually enjoying chatting, whatever. And I'm looking down at the river off the drop, and, basically I end up seeing the big guy down there on the other side of the river, off the drop, and he wasn't alone. He was standing there with his hands in the water, and he had another with him. He had a little one as well. The one that was bigger with him was a female. She looked thick. I'm not gonna lie. She looked like broad shoulders, just thick, kind of like Patty looking sort of. But she didn't look like, in my opinion, she didn't look that old. And she was like a red brown color, actually kind of a nice color. And the little one was in the water, and she picked it up. She leaned down, picked it up in her arms, and just held it, and it wrapped its arms around her neck and shoulders. And they were literally just stopping doing what they were doing. And they were just looking up at me and looking up at the truck. And again, I'm just seeing them standing there. And I'm like, what? Grandpa? And I'm leaning over, and I'm patting him on the arm, Grandpa, you need to stop the truck. The big guy is down there. He's with his family. He's not alone. I'm like, please, Grandpa, stop. I need to show you so you know that I'm not lying. See? And he's just not stopping. And he's like, Megan, it's okay. Take a deep breath. I could see him as we're passing. And I'm like, well, and he's like, I know he's there. And I guess he's showing us his family. He just didn't quite understand it himself. He just thought, oh, well, they're probably fishing or something. And I'm just kind of he's has a family. I mean, he has this little fluffy, he almost looked like almost grill sort of, but not quite, just really floofy looking, the little guy. And he had dark hair like his dad. He looked a lot like his dad. He had kind of a brownish face, though, more like his mom, but he had reddish dark brown black hair. It was very interesting. And they were just standing there next to each other, and the baby in her arms, just looking up at us as we're driving by. And so my grandpa decides, he's like, okay, Megan, look, I think when you're a little older, I will tell you more about the big guy and his family. He's like, I just want you to know that nothing is going to happen as long as you stay home, or, you're with somebody. Just be smart, basically. Just don't go out in the woods anymore on your own if you don't feel safe or comfortable, basically. He's like, just be smart about it. And he's like, these things have been here longer than us. He's like, I have a feeling that when I moved here, we settled here, maybe they had been here, or maybe they had come through this area before. And he's like, we are here. This is their domain. This is the wilderness, even though we have these fields and everything, at the end of the day, they live out in the wild, off the land. And he's like, they're very quiet and private for the most part. I've never seen them really ever. He's like, I've only seen them a couple of times, but like, it was never for very long. And he never had any violent experiences either. But he did say that the big guy, like, he felt as though he could be very dangerous if he did anything at all that he might think was aggressive. So he just did his absolute best. Like my grandpa, he even like looked up some information on chimps or gorillas. He just kind of wanted to try and understand what the heck he was even looking at, because he himself, like, he just thought, oh, it's a giant. Giants are real, or like, and then it's like, maybe there's just like some kind of ancient human that is extremely private. Anything to do with people. Like maybe they're an ancestor, like maybe they're an alien, who knows? Like he personally thought that maybe they were like kind of partially spiritual being and partially physical. And I think I kind of agree with him, but I'm not 100% on that. But yeah, there was this one night. This was really actually one of the creepiest, weirdest things that I remember happening. This was probably like a year later, but it was nighttime, and we would have coyotes that would come on the property. Sometimes we'd even see wolves occasionally. Like we were, my grandfather's farm was near an area called Swan Hills. Like it was very wild. There's hills, miles upon miles upon miles of wilderness. Like it's insane how thick and dense it is out there. And there's just so much that you can live off of the land, here. Honestly, Canada has so much diversity when it comes to plants and animals. I really believe that these creatures were living out here for the most part just fine. But I can tell from looking at the big guy that I have a feeling their lives are probably pretty difficult or pretty harsh. Just a thought, but I'm not sure.
I would agree with you. What I've heard about your area, it seems like a very wild, and the winters can be very hard up there for sure. Very
brutal. Actually, that's one of the things that my grandfather specifically told me, is because winters here can be so brutal, especially where he was living, because he's pretty much out in like the middle of nowhere. Like he had to hire somebody to come out with a grader to do the roads and stuff, because our entire road going up to our house, would just get snowed so much. And we definitely did not want to get stuck out there, because that could easily have happened if we weren't smart. Thank goodness he was a very prepared man for winter. But yeah, there were some very brutal winters that I even remember as a kid. And he said that sometimes winters were so brutal that he would hear almost like a sound of a gunshot going off in the woods. But he was like, nah, it's just a tree breaking. Because sometimes if it gets so cold, sometimes like little trees or whatever, or branches will snap off every now and then just because it's so cold. And he felt like, I guess, kind of sorry for a lot of the animals, especially these beings, for whatever reason. He just kind of felt like we have plenty. We have more than enough. We have so much, in fact, that we're going to end up throwing stuff away and it's going to be a waste. So he was kind of like, screw it. I'll just go and leave all this crap way far out in the woods away from home, and kind of as almost maybe an offering to the land even, and just kind of be like, here, this is our portion. We're giving back kind of to nature. I hope this will do kind of thing. Like he even told me sometimes he'd just talk like he'd be like, I don't know if there's anyone here, but just in case, this is for you guys. Please do not come to our home. Okay. Like, it's so funny. Like it creeped him the heck out. Like he definitely believed that things could be possible, but for him, even seeing something like that was very jarring. He just never really talked about it much. He just felt like it's something beyond his comprehension because he, was very, very old school. Excuse me. Sorry. He was very old school. Like he was just a very hardworking person. Very, not the type to be dreaming like me, like how I was when I was younger.
He sounds like a guy who the world needs a lot more people like him, that respect the land and just a hardworking, good guy. Yeah. You're very lucky to have a grandpa like him for sure.
I was very lucky too, actually, very lucky. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't know the difference between deer dung and bear dung. Just kidding. And like just other hunting or fishing like activities. Like he just always felt like nature will heal you and it'll help you get in touch with your true self and bring out the best in you, because like you have to push yourself in nature to survive or to eat, so he was always kind of like, don't ever kill anything you don't intend to eat. Don't ever waste. Like he was very much against wastefulness. So.
Megan, there was a few minutes ago where you had started to bring up that there was one night where something very unsettling happened.
Oh, yes.
Do you remember, or do you mind sharing that?
Yes, I would love to.
Thank you.
Thank you. So what happened was there were very large packs of coyotes. There still are here in Alberta and Canada. They can be a real problem for livestock. And so at this time, this was a year later, it was nighttime, probably around, I'm going to say 10:30, 11:30 at night, very, very dark out. The lights are on in the yard, but beyond that point, pitch black. And I could hear all the coyotes just, howling, doing normal coyote, sounds. And I could hear the dogs, they'd go out there to make sure the perimeter was guarded and that the coyotes knew that they weren't welcome. Well, the coyotes were just making so much racket. Like it went from being kind of normal sounds like coyotes to all of a sudden sounding almost like just way more racket. Like it was just weird. It was almost like alarmed sounds or something. And I felt, okay, this is what's weird, is there was this loud, like this all of a sudden, and then just absolute silence. And I'm like, what? I was just had the window open and I'm sitting in the bedroom watching a movie and I hear this and then silence and no more coyote sounds. And I see the dogs come running back in the yard and they just go and hide in the doghouse. The other one goes and hides under the trailer. And I'm like, okay, that was weird. Years later, I've been kind of thinking about it. And I was like, maybe he was just sick and tired of all the racket. I have no idea. Well, that was not me. It wasn't my grandpa. That did not sound like an animal to me that I've ever heard. I've never in a million years heard something just such a loud bellowing roar. It wasn't like a roar though, but it was like a loud scream. Oof, gave me willies.
That's wild. Wow.
It was like a really deep voice. It was so loud. It was crazy. That scared the crap out of me.
Was that the only time that you had heard sounds like that from the woods that you didn't recognize to be other animals, or?
Other than like tree knocks, occasionally I would hear like loud snapping sounds, or loud, like sometimes like a tree was getting pushed over sometimes. And sometimes it would sound like a bat was being hit against another, like a tree or something. It would just echo every now and then. But like mostly it was just, sometimes just the weird feeling of being watched. Sometimes I'd see lights way out in the distance. I would just like, okay, what? The road is over here. And this is only one road that comes in and out of this place. That's it. This is literally one singular road. So why would anybody be out there in the woods on the very back part of the property? Like, why were there lights out there? And I'm like, better not be people creeping. Like my grandpa told me that every now and then he'd see these weird lights sometimes, and they wouldn't be around much, but like every now and then he'd see like these weird little orbs, I guess. Like one was big and looked kind of like the size of, I don't know, like a grapefruit maybe. But like mostly, yeah, they were just always really far away. But he always said that it was weird how they were just kind of moving along through the woods and then they'd just be gone, you know? He also said that just the eye shine was creepy, and I agreed with him because it was. I wouldn't see it happen very often, but I definitely saw it at least 3 different occasions. I saw a pair of green glowing eyes. They were pretty friggin' high up. And then I saw another pair, which were the kind of yellow glowing. Yeah. And that's about all I can recall for that, is seeing, that color of eyes sometimes. So I didn't know if it was a cow or what, but like it was situated in a weird part of the woods, since the cows in the field would always be over like in one section, and where the eye shine was situated pretty much right across from my grandparents' trailer, right across the road, all the way into the tree line. Like, so it's like they could see everything that was happening, you know, like the entirety of like the whole side of the trailer and the whole yard. I just feel like maybe sometimes, I don't know, maybe they were just watching because they were bored. I have no idea why they do what they do. I'm just glad they never came in the yard, because that would have been so freaking scary seeing one of them at night. It was scary enough seeing him during the day. I mean, I don't know. It's just really jarring. It's just, man, you never think that something that looks human and just seems so human-like, that massive, that powerful, that mysterious could exist out there. And the fact that it keeps itself hidden, and it's so intelligent, and it obviously knows its environment better than we do now. Like, humanity used to be in touch more with the land. We used to have, you know, more respect for the balance of things and be closer. And maybe we were closer with some of these beings, because like I've heard stories, you know, of some native tribes having them as kind of like neighbors of the woods. And most of the time they just kept to themselves, but like they were recognized as like another tribe, you know, of people, just kind of wild people that preferred to live in the old ways and did not want anything to do with us, because I don't know, maybe they just saw the way we treated each other over this thousands of years. Who knows? You know, maybe we went to war with them thousands of years ago, and because I've heard like, you know, tales of that as well. And definitely people have had some very nasty run-ins with these creatures, and I could believe it. These beings seemed very peaceful. They seemed more human than ape or animal to me. They really did. But I've also heard stories of creatures that are genuinely terrifying, that look like, well, like an experiment gone wrong, like a monster. And I've been told that there are evil ones and good ones, just like there are people that are good and evil. And these beings somehow can tell what your interest is in them, I guess. Like, I don't know if it's true, if they can read your mind, but I mean, I've certainly heard tales of mind speak, and anything is possible. I certainly felt some sort of weird connection with the one that I saw, the big male. And years later being told, even by a medicine woman that I just met randomly, she approached me and she told me that in a past life, you were a medicine woman and these being there, like you have the sight to be able to see things. And I'm like, okay, well, it's nice to meet you. Stranger I just met, but she was like, I'm a medicine woman. I just wanted you to know that I see that there's something, that you have some kind of sight or something or some kind of connection. And I'm like, okay. And it's just at the time, like, I mean, I've studied a lot of things when it comes to spirituality, religion, history. I like, biology, archaeology, paleontology. I love all that stuff. I think it's amazing, and it's good to learn about our history. And I feel like we're doomed to repeat the same mistakes
Absolutely.
if we don't learn about history. And I feel like these beings are a part of our history. And I don't feel like it's quite right that so much about them is kept a secret or hidden by certain government branches. But I get it. I think a lot of people might not be prepared or ready quite yet to accept fully the notion that there are other beings that could potentially be more intelligent than us in some ways. We as humanity, we've evolved amazingly in a lot of ways, and we can dominate almost any area of our planet, but there are still some parts of it that we can't. And these beings, they know how to at least coexist with the planet. And I'm trying my best to kind of, I suppose, follow that example. Like my whole life, I've seen weird things. Like I've seen some shadow beings before. I've had a dark entity that messed with me once. It was really scary, actually, because it literally tried to like possess me, and that really terrified me. And I was very lucky, thank goodness. Like I had some help. Praying actually to God and Jesus really did. Like I feel like that really did save me, because I was just getting involved in a lot of stuff I shouldn't have at one point, like witchcraft. And I just wanted to understand these things. But then I came to realize all I need is God. All I need is Jesus. All I need is to have some faith and try my best to be a decent person and live in the moment and be grateful, for what I have. So like that's basically, I'm at peace, and I feel that more than I've ever felt. But for a lot of years, I searched for answers. I wanted to understand, why is it that I ended up meeting a being like this, and then seeing his family. And you know what? I kind of feel like maybe that was a show of trust, or maybe it was just a random act, and I just randomly saw them there and they're just minding their own business fishing. Who knows?
Have you heard, I'm just very curious about the area that you're, I'm sure, have you ever talked to neighbors, and have they told you stories about how they've seen things too? Or is this very like it's kept inside your family and it does not get talked about?
It was kept inside the family. I actually wish that my grandfather could have asked our neighbors. That would have been nice, but I don't know if he ever did. If he ever did, he never mentioned it to me.
Sure. Does the homestead still owned by your family, or has it been passed on to someone else? It's been sold.
It's been sold, unfortunately. Sure. Actually, that's what's weird too, is the place has changed a lot. And I don't know. I don't know if they've seen anything or experienced anything there, but last I saw, the place was very much changed, and ever since my grandfather left. So who knows? It's quite isolated though, that's for sure. So if they had any experiences, I just hope that they're happy for the floodlights that my grandpa still left in the yard. And I hope that they're doing okay and that they're not having any unwanted visitors or any issues, because my grandfather in his way of coexisting with things, I feel in the end really did work out, but it doesn't always work out for other people because I know that, oh, hello, kitty. sometimes these beings are not always friendly. And sometimes, in fact, they don't have much going on, and they seem to decide to come into people's lives and torment them or watch them while they're in their homes through their windows and be creepers. And that sucks when that happens. And I feel great sympathy for people that have had those experiences, that have had the daylight scared out of them by these beings. And I would like to believe that there are still good ones. I want to believe that. I don't know. Maybe it's because I want to believe they're still good in people. And I really believe that. I have mostly just faith that in the end, good will prevail, that we're going to be okay as long as we all, actually come together and recognize how blessed we are, because we really live in an age where, less disease, less poverty, less everything than it was prior centuries. And I just kind of feel like we shouldn't take for granted, the blessings we've been given and this beautiful world that we live. Like, I don't want to be afraid of nature. I don't want to be afraid of going out in the woods. When I go camping, I definitely sometimes get a little anxious before going. But that's also because I'm like, I just hope one day I don't come across another one and it's not a nice one. Like that's kind of where I think now is like, I do not want to come across any of these special entities or beings that might be demonic. Like if it's a dog man or something, I do not want to see them. And I know they're up here in Canada, just like Wendigos, all kinds of cryptids. Aren't we lucky? But that's like
exactly. Megan, I would be remiss not to ask you, just because I'm curious. Have you experienced anything else besides Bigfoot in that area, or is it just been the Sasquatch creature that you've experienced?
Other than me seeing some shadow beings, at this one house that I went to, the people that lived there said that it always had a very rank, kind of rotten smell in the basement. And they said that their house was haunted, and they were just like a friend of the family, and we went there, and I just, out of curiosity, I went down the basement and it smelled really, really bad. And next thing I know, I see this black shadow figure literally moving from one side of the room to the other right in front of me. And that scared the crap out of me too. And also I've seen little orbs, here and there as well in my life. Sometimes I'll see like a weird aura above people's heads, but I don't know what that is. Sometimes it's just like a color, like an energy. Sometimes like this one woman who had an accident, she ended up drowning, and I saw this dark shadow hovering above her head and behind her. And that was, really weird. And then next thing I know, she's like in the river drowned, and I'm like, oh wow. Crap. And like, it's just weird. Sometimes I see these weird things and I don't understand it. This has been happening my whole life. For the most part, thankfully, especially these past years, it's been very peaceful and normal. Thank goodness. But I do live in town. I really don't want to live on a farm again. Really. I don't know. It's just kind of a creepy idea or notion that these things could be out there and I wouldn't know, or I would know because sometimes they seem to reveal themselves to me for whatever reason. At least back then, I haven't seen any since, thankfully, but who knows? I'm still young. I'm only in my prime. I still have more camping trips to go on.
But you have some amazing, amazing stories. And I'm so thankful that you were able to share them with me and my audience. I mean, I'm just blown away by the family history that you have. And thank you so much. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Megan. And thank you all for listening. Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed, share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's the list. All right, I'm going to use this space this week to announce that I'll be at the Sasquatch Summerfest in Oak Ridge, Oregon as an attender. I won't be presenting or anything, but I'll be hanging out trying to interview people that have had Bigfoot encounters. If you're from the Oak Ridge, Oregon area or surrounding and you've had a Bigfoot experience, please contact me directly, bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Also, Priscilla was nice enough that if you get your tickets through sasquatchsummerfest.com and use code Bigfoot Society, you can get 50% off the cost of your tickets, which is a big amount. So code Bigfoot Society to get 50% off your tickets, sasquatchsummerfest.com, and helps out the podcast as well. A special thank you to all the Bigfoot Society Patreon and YouTube channel members. It's your support that helps keep the show going, and I extremely appreciate it. I had a listener comment, hey, what's a current update with the road to getting to full-time? Well, here's the deal. The push, as if you've seen on social media, is, well, now I've kind of tweaked it a little bit. So by my calculations, once we get 824 people in the Patreon, we should be good to go. So what I did is we're going to do it a little bit differently. It's now adding the current amount plus the amount that are joining, and there's tons of people joining every day. It's wild, guys. So right now we're at 176 members are in there, ready to go out of the 824 that are needed in order for us to go full-time. That puts us at about 22%. So if you've been putting around back and forth the idea of joining the Bigfoot Society Patreon, now's the time. I'm telling you, it's time to check it out. $7 a month starts. It's $15 a month as well, but $7 a month is a great place to start. Patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society. And if you can't swing that, please just share the show with your friends and make sure you're subscribed on your favorite podcast platform and YouTube as well. But thanks again so much for listening, guys.
Her and I can get on here and we can tell our stories. Maybe there's somebody else out there listening that's too afraid to tell their story. Maybe this will give them the courage to come out and not feel so bad about it. Who cares what anybody thinks? I know what I saw. I know what's out there. That's all I care about.
Please let people know. Please let them know. If you ever see one of these things, you need to tell. Because if you don't, then shame on you. You know? Shame on you.